Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to take a look at circles and both area and circumference formulas today. For this, you need your calculator. A formula sheet would be handy. It would also be great if you copied some of those examples into your notes so that you have some good things to look back on as you're taking notes on circles. Circles can be kind of tricky, so a lot of times the more examples we kind of go through and the more practice you get, it gets a lot easier. So I would write down things in your notes today so you have some place to look back on later on. So area and circumference today. So let's remember basically what a circle is. A circle is the set of all points that are equidistant to a center point. That means if I pick a center point and I measure out a certain distance and put another dot and drag that, keeping this constant distance away from the center, kind of like spokes on a wheel, and if I were to drag that all the way around, that would generate for me a circle. So the outside edge of a circle is equidistant to that center all the time. So if I was going to bring up a pretty picture here, there are certain parts that we should know for a circle. We should have this in your notes, okay? Please draw this in your notes. A circle, you need to have a center. You should also be aware that from the center to the edge of the circle there, that's called a radius. Now if we go all the way across the circle, through the center, that's called a diameter. And that would be twice as long as the radius. So all the way through the circle in the center is a diameter, and a radius is only halfway across. But every circle needs to have a center spot right there. There are other parts to a circle, but this is just the basic stuff that we're going to work with right now. And from there, we need to go into your formula sheet now. There are two formulas that you're probably already familiar with when it comes to circles, things that you've heard about or used before. The first one is for circumference of a circle. Please get this in your formula sheet. Circumference is like the perimeter. So it's finding that distance around the outside of the circle. That formula is C equals 2 pi r. So 2 times pi times radius. And remember, pi is 3.14, or you can use a pi button on your calculator. The area of a circle is a little bit different. The area is the inside of the circle. So area equals pi r squared. So notice the subtle difference between the two formulas. Besides the a and the c, of course, both have a pi, both have an r, both have a 2. But where that 2 is completely different when we're talking about area. Radius squared is something that we're going to be calculating quite often when we find the areas of our circles here. And 2 pi r is going to give me a very different answer than pi r squared, depending upon the circle, okay? So be careful on those two formulas. Be careful to read what a question is asking you to find. So this first one here, let's work through this one. Maybe you want to copy this into your notes. Find the area and circumference of a circle with a diameter of 8 feet. So for this, we need to find both the area and the circumference. So I'm going to need both formulas, pi r squared and circumference equals 2 pi r. Now, circumference and area is the inside, space inside in square units. Circumference is the distance around the outside, if we were to put fence around the outer edge of a circle. So now we need to plug in what we know. We know that the circle has a diameter of 8. Now remember, diameter is all the way across the circle. So that means my radius is only 4 feet because that's halfway across the circle. So let's go ahead and plug that in. So for area equals pi. You can use your pi button or 3.14. And then radius is 4 squared. Now if I do the 4 squared part first, I end up with pi times 16. Oftentimes you'll see books or people leave it just like this. If we don't want to write it as a decimal, I would leave it in terms of pi. It means don't actually calculate it out. Just leave it as 16 times pi. So the area is 16 pi. 16 times 3.14. But if I actually want to calculate the decimal value or approximation for the area, I would type in 16 times pi into my calculator, or just 16 pi, and it will give me the approximation for that area. So 50.3 feet squared. And now if we go to circumference, 2 pi, remember the radius is r again, 4. So if we plug this in, now if I was going to leave this in terms of pi, I can take the 2 times the 4, because this means everything's being multiplied here, and that gives me 8. I could leave it in terms of pi, saying 8 pi, or calculate that actual decimal approximation. 8 times the number pi is 25.1 feet. Notice on circumference it's feet, on area it's square feet. Units will matter, okay? So let's look at the second one. Find the area and circumference of a radius of 9 feet. If we have a circle, leave your answer in terms of pi. So similar to the last one, area equals pi r squared. We go ahead and we plug in the 9 for the radius. 9 squared is 81, so this is 81 pi. And it says we don't have to figure out the decimal value, so 81 pi feet squared. And then we'll go ahead and do the circumference. Circumference equals 2 pi r. And if I plug in the radius, 2 pi times 9, leaving the pi, just 2 times 9 makes 18, so it would be 18 pi. 18 pi feet for circumference. So if it says you can leave your answer in terms of pi, it's actually nice and easy because you don't have to talk about rounding. You don't actually have to type that decimal value into your calculator. What if we know a circle has a circumference of 28 pi? How can we find its area? Keyword area. So what we know is there's a circumference of 28 pi. Let's start with what we know. The circumference is 28 pi, and the circumference formula is 2 pi r. So if we plug in what we know we already have a circumference of 28 pi. I'll plug that in where the c is, and now we do some algebra here to try to get this r alone. Notice what's in front of that r is a 2 times a pi. We're going to go ahead and divide off 2 and pi, because then the r would be by himself and I'd know a radius. On the other side, notice pi over pi will cancel, and 28 divided by 2 is 14. So what I know is I have a radius of 14 on my circle. Is that what I wanted to know? Well, not exactly. I wanted to know its area. So I got to keep going. I got to do another formula. I need that radius though, because that's going to help me in my area formula. So if my radius is 14, pi r squared is my area formula. Plugging in the 14, and I can square the 14 and say I have 196 pi for the area. So sometimes we're given information that allows us to solve for something missing so that we can figure out area, circumference, whatever it might be. This fourth one, let's take a look at this picture. Find the perimeter of this shape. So if we were going to try to measure all the way around this whole shape, how would we do that? We have curvy parts, we have straight parts. Let's think about the curvy part first. This curvy part is a half of the distance all the way around a circle. So it's half of the circumference of this circle. Let's spell right, huh? There we go, half the circumference. So if we were going to go ahead and find the circumference and take half of it, that would give me this curvy part that I need to know. Now notice what was labeled was 4 feet. Since it's labeled in the center, that's the diameter all the way across. So that tells me I have a radius of 2. So I'll go ahead and do the circumference formula. Circumference equals 2 pi r, which is 2. So circumference is 4 pi. Now if I only want half of that, because that's only half of this distance around a circle, whereas circumference represents the whole distance around the circle, then I would just divide that by 2. So the part that I have there, the curvy part, is 2 pi. So if I want a decimal approximation for that, 2 pi is about 6.28. And that's the part that's curved. Now is that going to get me all the way around this shape? Not quite. Remember, Curved part we just found, and we need to go all the way around. So we found the curvy part, the portion of the circumference. Now let's go on the straight part. How far is it all the way across here? 4 more feet. So onto the curvy part, we'll add 4 feet that represents the diameter, and we have 10.28 feet all the way around. Okay, all the way around that shape. So when we have curved and portions of circles, we can still do circumference and things to help us out. And let's take a look at this last one. The center of a circle is at the point 5, 5, and the circle passes through the point -1, 5. Find the area and circumference of the circle. Sometimes we can put circles on graphs. Don't worry about it. Draw a picture. The center of a circle is at the point 5, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the center. I'm going to put a C. And it passes through the point -1, 5. That means my circle is doing something like that. Okay, passing through the point, C is in the middle. Find the area and circumference of the circle. So the area formula is pi r squared, and the circumference formula is 2 pi r. For both of those formulas, we need to know r. We need to have a radius. What did drawing this picture do for us? Well, it allows us to see a radius. Center of the circle out to this point right here, how far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. So that means the radius is 6. And now that I know that, I can just plug that in. Pi 6 squared, that's 36 pi. 36 times 3.14, if you want a decimal approximation, you can do that. Or you can just leave it as 36 pi. Now if we do circumference, 2 pi, radius, that would be 12 pi. So circumference is 12 pi and area is 36 pi. Drawing that picture helped us figure that out. So don't be afraid to draw a picture if you don't have one already provided for you. And later on, when we get into more complicated pictures, you're going to start to see shapes inside of circles. That's something that we're going to need to get used to and use all of the tools that we had in geometry here, Pythagorean theorem, SOHCAHTOA, whatever it takes to help us find pieces that we need to find area and circumference for circles. Okay, so thank you for taking good notes. We've done some circle basics today, and we'll continue to move forward with some circle formulas later on. Thank you.